You good, Marina? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Also in that manila envelope, Tish kind of typed up a little bit about me.
Okay.
So that helps.
We can have it?
Yeah,
Oh,
of course.
that's so nice. Thank you.
That's great.
Okay. All right. Y'all ready?
Mm-hmm.
You ready? Yeah. Okay. So this is an oral history interview on the campus of Oklahoma City University as a part of the Uptown 23rd Oral History Project. Today is Monday, April 11th, 2016. My name is Taylor Rouse, and my team and I are interviewing Jason King, an owner of Lotus Tattoo on 23rd Street. So thank you for being here with us today.
My pleasure.
So let's just talk about your business and how you connected 23rd Street.
Okay, so before my business, this was kind of the street where a lot of things were going on, and there was a little mom and pop punk rock shop called Vintage, or 23rd Street Vintage. It was owned by Kip and Peggy Curtis, and it was one of two punk rock shops in the state. You know, if you wanted a Dead Kennedys t-shirt, it was either there or a place in Tulsa, and that was it. So starting probably about 83 or 84, I was shopping on this street. So where Cuppy and Joe's is now is where Vintage used to be.
Okay.
And for years and years and years, that's where alternative kids went to buy, Doc Martens, because you couldn't buy them at the mall. As anything. So, yeah, 83, 84, probably there. And then I went to Oklahoma State University, and when I came back, I got a job at Plasma Alliance, which was across the street from there. So I worked there for a year or two before I opened up 23rd Street Body Piercing. And originally, 23rd Street Body Piercing was just a few doors down. It's where the barbecue place is now. So that was our shop, and I lived back behind there. And so that was a little less than a year. It got really popular really fast, so we had to move into a bigger building. So 411 Northwest 23rd is where we are now. I was literally driving by when I saw this old man putting a for rent sign up. I turned around. That was back before there were medians there. It was all sort of, instead of parallel parking, it was sort of, and so I whipped around and I pulled in, and the little old man was a guy named George Shambor, little Lebanese guy. Totally interesting dude. He owned the Tower Theater. He owned a lot of downtown. He was, in the very nicest sense of the word, a slumlord. Loved the guy, totally did. But he was like, listen, son, I'm gonna rent you out 4,000 square feet for $400 a month. He goes, this building is almost 100 years old. Something's gonna go wrong. So if the water goes wrong or the electricity goes wrong, don't call me. Call an electrician or a plumber.
Okay.
I said, yes, sir. He goes, save your shekels. I remember to this day, save your shekels, son, because you're going to need it. So we moved into the building, let's see, it was February of 96. And immediately I couldn't get water on because the past tenant had not paid the bill. So I went down to his warehouse, which is in downtown. Had purple neon around the top. It's about a 5-story building. It's still over there someplace. But so I went in there, and it was, really hot in that building for some reason. Maybe because he was an old man, but it was, March by this time that we got it open, March or maybe April. And I walk in the warehouse, and he was a collector of things, a hoarder. And the Tower Theater had been the theater. If Cleopatra was opening up, that's where it opened. Okay, I mean, it was where all the big Golden Age films, happened here in Oklahoma. So he had all of that stuff. He had, just everything. This whole five-story, block by block building was just chock full of things. So I walk into his office where it's somehow even hotter, and he is sitting there with no shirt on. Keep in mind, this guy is like, 80 years old. And I'm like, George, I can't get them to turn the water on. He goes, what do you mean? I go, I can't get them to turn the water on because the last tenant hadn't paid their bill. Well, you're not the last tenant, you're a new tenant. I know that, but the city won't do it. He literally picked up the phone and called the city and said, "This is George, turn on the water at 411, and hung up the phone. And by the time I got there, it was on.
Wow.
He had that many properties, and it was that big a deal, and I was truly impressed. I'd never seen anybody with any practical power like that in my life, so went back, got it all situated and, opened the doors, and we've been doing business. It'll be 21 years this May on 23rd Street. So we opened the tattoo shop at Atomic Lotus. It'll be 10 years ago this June. It seems weird that the tattoo bill's already been passed 10 years now. But
So yeah, let's talk about the tattoo bill. Like, how crazy is it that Oklahoma didn't allow tattoos, and
no,
just
it was-
recently that they do?
We were the last two, us and South Carolina were the last two states to legalize it.
Mhm.
Yeah, and that was 10 years ago now, so, which just has gone by so fast.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, you couldn't give, receive, or solicit a tattoo in the state of Oklahoma. And that was it, that was the law. Now, piercing had never even been considered in those laws, so when we first opened, it was completely unregulated. There was no laws at all. And then in '99, they passed some minimum laws, nothing crazy.
Mhm.
And then revamped the piercing laws in '06 whenever they passed the tattoo laws.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So what made you want to jump from piercings to tattoos and doing both?
Well, I mean, piercing and
Goes
tattooing is
hand
like
in
peanut
hand.
butter and jelly.
Yeah.
They're not the same substance, but they're very, very complementary for sure. So we actually got into that building. It was two halves. And originally the building that we're in now had been Ed Reynolds Florist. And it probably opened, I want to say 1914 is when the building was built. And it was Ed Reynolds Florist until the early 80s, maybe late 70s. And understand that, Ed Reynolds Florist and then Cheevers, the restaurant, used to be a florist as well. They were competing florists because Heritage Hills was very wealthy. That's where the DeLisi Mansion is. That's where, every governor of this state has basically lived. The Bellman Mansion is there. There's a lot of stuff.
Right.
So, fresh cut flowers was a big deal, and they were competing florists. So, and then it changed from Ed Reynolds to Busby Florist, I want to say in maybe '82 or so. And it went downhill quickly after that. I want to say that when I was going to the Vintage in the mid '80s, it had become a thrift store. And then it eventually had become like an appliance repair place. And that was who George Chambord had kicked out and was putting up the for rent sign when I saw
Gotcha.
it. So, remodeled the whole building. Because it was in bad shape by the time I got there. It was kind of Pepto-Bismol pink and seafoam green.
Oh.
They had painted everything. Those two colors, and why?
Just for you.
Well, but what's sad is it was Busby Florist that had painted it those colors, and neither the thrift store or the appliance repair place had ever bothered to do anything with it. So it was in pretty rough shape, and we're constantly doing remodels and renovations and stuff. And the building that old, you can't let it get out from under you, or
Right.
you'll never rein it back in. So,
Okay, so you've obviously been on 23rd Street for quite some time.
yeah.
So you probably see a lot of changes happening, probably
Yes.
with the decline and then the rebuilding of it.
Yeah, the mid '80s was rough, and I'm sure part of that, if you look at not just the history of cities where there's boom and bust, but also in Oklahoma, '82 was a terrible year. That was a bad year for the oil business, and especially in the '80s. So went the oil was the rest of the economy. So it was a pretty bleak place by the time I was even shopping there. But when you're a young punk rock kid, that's awesome. You love that. The dirty, gross city is what you were after. So we didn't mind it so much. Now when we got into that building, and finally when I bought the building, as an adult business owner that owns the building there, excuse me, you're a lot more interested in things being nice. So
Right.
we were definitely thrilled when all that changed. I mean, it was, this part of 23rd Street and Lincoln were that was, prostitutes and drugs, and that's where all that stuff was. So, like I said, we opened up next to the Vintage first. We were 3 doors down from the Vintage, and across from there was the Plasma Place, and then across the other street was Church's Chicken. And where my piercing room was, there were windows on both sides, so I could see Church's and I could see the 23rd Street. And this haggard old prostitute, God bless her soul, she looked terrible. But she had gotten a box of chicken and was walking across the street when she saw a policeman sitting in the parking lot of the Plasma Place. And she immediately turned to go back and got hit by a car. Bam, chicken and french fries shot everywhere. And the guy that was sitting next to me, customer, goes, "Man, that was a perfectly good waste of french fries and chicken." Now, being that she was drunk all the time, she actually rolled out of it and was fine. It didn't hurt her at all.
Man.
The one time being, loosey-goosey paid off.
Yeah.
So, and that wasn't even the only story with her. We'd moved down to our current location, and across the street from there is 400 Northwest 23rd. And that building was in bad shape. The second story had fallen through, and I mean, it was just basically a concrete shell. But it still had the stoop. And they would sit on that stoop underneath the, in the shade basically. And the way that the turn is there, so if you're going west on 23rd, if you turn north there, it's a really deep turn. And the cars would stop there, and other cars could still get around and get on the street. And the prostitutes would go to the car and be gone for a half hour, 45 minutes, and they come back with a bottle of booze. Well, you do that 10 times a day, that's a lot of booze. And by the end of the night, they were stumbling drunk, it was bad. And the same prostitute that got hit by the car, she got up and started going westbound on 23rd Street, and where the driveway is, she lost her footing and just fell with her head in the street and passed out. Where, these cars are swerving around her head. Finally, I was like, I've got to go out there, drug her, and put her in the grass so that no one ran over her head accidentally. But yeah, 23rd Street was a pretty rough, rough and tumble, gross, dirty kind of place. They had to remove all the payphones from across Hudson from me. There was a payphone bank of 5 payphones there. And every drug deal in the city was happening there. So finally, we constantly called because, we're trying to run a piercing shop at this point, no tattoos, and we're already fighting a preconceived notion. People believe what they want to believe. They don't think, well, my kid gets that, and they're not, a drug dealer or whatever. So we're already fighting these preconceived notions, and here just across the street is every crack dealer in town. So we finally got them to remove that stuff, and then what was her name? The first lady that bought Cheevers, or bought that building that Cheevers was in and put Cheevers Restaurant there. Charlene was her name. And she was not a nice person. I did not like her at all. My first introduction to her, actually, was I was back in the piercing room doing a piercing, and I heard somebody drilling into my building. So I finished up the piercing, and I'd go around, and there's some laborers there literally drilling a big hole into my building where they were planning on connecting a fence. I was like, "Stop, what are you doing?" And we're gonna put this fence up. I was like, "Who told you to do this?" So they took me around there, and Charlene was inside the building. I'm like, "Who are you? What kind of neighbor comes and just starts drilling in somebody else's house? You ask permission for these kind of things. Do I mind? No, not at all. But you can't do it now, so figure out some other way to do it. In the future, be a neighbor and ask, But I gather from her husband actually came, her ex-husband now, but her husband actually came and apologized later and, you know, admitted that she had been an indulged, you know, rich kid. Just didn't know any better. It's like, well, go home and smack her mom for me. So, yeah, but once she came in, she knew some people, and that's when I started seeing changes on 23rd Street. So I feel like she kind of helped, because she had a business interest there, helped kind of kickstart that whole thing. And then we started seeing, you know, the Uptown 23rd Association, which had been around well before me, but was down to the last few, you know, businesses. By the time that I had opened, there was a Resource Design, like, kind of between us and Family Dollar. There was a couple of high-end, like drapery stores, and they were kind of the last little bit of the old, you know, moneyed business owners there. So, I mean, what the Uptown Association is now is, you know, it's very hip and cool. But back then it was, you know, this staid old money clinging desperately to the last vestiges of power, and it was kind of a sad thing. But we started seeing them meet a little more often, and then they started talking about putting the medians. And, you know, the medians are pretty, but it decimated our parking. We went from having 8 parking spots to having 2. And, you know, when you only have 2 parking places, that makes business a lot more difficult. But, I mean, we understood where they were going with everything, and they were talking about making it more pedestrian friendly and bicycle friendly and all that good stuff. So that was sort of the beginning of that. And even though I didn't like her, you know, she definitely had an impact on this street. I don't know how single-handedly responsible she is for that, but I think maybe she helped it along some.
So what time frame was that?
That was probably late 90s. Yeah, we opened up, it was 96 is when we got there, and it seems like it was 4 or 5 years later that Cheevers became a thing, you know. And you know, now, gosh, there's, especially that little block that I'm on, there's so much going on now.
Yeah.
You know, the tower's finally been purchased. It got bought 8 or 9 years ago, but the guy that bought it didn't have the wherewithal to get it up and running. I think he underestimated the project. Because what it sold for, we looked at it. I mean, even we could afford it, but we couldn't afford what it would cost to get everything up to code.
Yeah.
You know, it'd be literally 4 or 5 times what the price was to get it where it was legal. It's just way more money than we could ever even dream of coughing up. So,
That's true.
So he sold it to another guy recently, and that guy has been doing tons of work on it. And it's gonna happen here pretty quick. So
Well, that's exciting.
We'll finally have neighbors. We haven't. The buildings directly to the west of us, a guy named Tom Summers owned those 4 spots. So basically from my place to the tower, those places in there. And he was an interesting guy. He had made a ton of money in the stock markets. He was an investor, and but his first love had always been art. And he basically just bought a ton of it. And he had an eye for it. He really did. And he filled those 4 buildings full. And basically, he sold to other curators. So it's not like you, hey, I like that painting in the window, I'm gonna go in there and buy it. He sold collections to people.
Okay.
So you had to be in the art business to even get an interview with him, even to go in. So, but he had that stuff leaning against the walls, you know, just stacks of paintings, and you know, it was like a warehouse almost. It wasn't even like a place that you would go and, you know, let me look at that painting. You know, you have to go, hold on, let me go find it. You know? I remember one day, you know, I liked Tom. Tom was a gruff old man. By the time, you know, by his last 10 years, he had gotten really grumpy. but I still liked him a lot, although he alienated the hell out of everybody else. I went over there one time, I can't even remember why, like one of his doors was left open, you know, like a door. Here's, you know, $2 million worth of art with no alarm on it. No alarm, no water sprinklers, no nothing. I mean, somebody could break the glass and get all that stuff. And, you know, it was just crazy, crazy. But I walked in there, and he's like, hey, come here, let me show you something. It's like, all right, Tom, because he was always going to show me something cool, no matter what it was. It was awesome. So he kind of goes back and he pulls back some stuff, and there's 2 paintings there. He goes, what do you think of those? And I looked at him, and it's like the splatter paint stuff. You know? And I go, well, it looks like somebody's trying to copy Jackson Pollock. And he goes, that's exactly what they are. 2 Jackson Pollocks that just got estimated for $10 million apiece. Clump, put all the paintings
Oh my
back up front, and just sat there. You know, I'm just thinking, oh my God, there's $20 million right there. You know, and he's just putting other stuff on top of it, and we go back and just shoot the breeze. He was a totally interesting guy. So his daughter now, Beverly, she sold one of those buildings to the church that's there now. And, you know, hopefully she's going to open a gallery. I mean, I don't know how much better a starting seed you could get than, you know, here's my life's work. Here's, you know, thousands and thousands of works of art. Start a gallery. But she says she's going to do it. We'll see.
All right.
Yeah, we'll see.
So what other types of businesses do you see popping up soon, or do you
Oh,
hear
at least
about?
now there's a bunch of good food places.
Oh,
Boy, it
yeah.
was- I mean, don't get me wrong, I love Asian food, and there's tons of great Asian food around because of where we are. But to actually have, you know, the Good Egg Group has opened up a bunch of really great stuff. You know, the food trucks that come and go, and then, you know, have opened up Big Truck Tacos, and then, you know, the Drake and all that stuff. So yeah, it's nice that we actually have food we can walk to, because it used to be, you know, it's Church's Chicken, McDonald's, it's all just sort of the fast food stuff that's so bad. So now there's actually great food that's close by.
Right, and we've kind of heard it called like the entertainment district. Like, would
Well-
you agree with that? We've also heard like Paseo is the arts and Plaza is the arts district.
So to me, it was inevitable. And why I say that is that Bricktown, you know, when Spaghetti Warehouse got in there, I mean, understand before that, it was closed. That whole part of town was empty at 5 o'clock. And it stayed that way for years and years and years. There was 2 clubs that opened up down there. There was a place called the Baja Cafe, which was, believe it or not, kind of like a reggae blues bar, kind of weird. And then there was also a place called the Club Pyramid, and that was opened by a guy named David Silvera, who's since died of cancer. But that sort of started some of that, and Spaghetti Warehouse was definitely an anchor. They were the only one down there for years that wasn't like an alternative club. And of course, that's all grown up and has become this huge district now.
Right.
So Bricktown, and then the Western Corridor was the other big, you know, all the cool bars, all the cool restaurants were on Western. So it was just obvious, if you're gonna drive from one to the other, you take 23rd Street. It was gonna happen, you know,
Okay.
I mean, it is the obvious route between 2 entertainment places. So I wouldn't necessarily call it the entertainment district, because I see it more as a thoroughfare between 2 other, you know, we're a lot more like Western than we are like Bricktown.
Okay.
Paseo is for sure the arts district. And as far as Plaza's concerned, I mean, it's super cool, but it's grown as big as it can get. You know, there was only 2 or 3 blocks of usable buildings there. The rest is all housing. You know, it's super cool, but, you know, other than the theater there, it's not much of an arts district. You know, I mean, there's not actual artists you know, doing things there. So, I mean, there's the dance stuff, and there's the Gaylord Center there, and the theater. So that is very arty. But you know, when I think of arts, I also think of painting and you know, the other stuff as well. So to me, Plaza's more of an arts district, and has definitely more of a heritage of that kind of thing as well, because there's artists been coming through there forever. I mean, I've got a degree in English literature, and from a writer's point of view, like Jack Kerouac stayed there and wrote. I mean, so if anyone was going from one coast to the other, oftentimes that's where they stayed. So, and even before the beat writers, so the beat generation is like the Kerouac generation.
Mm-hmm.
Before that even, the Lost Generation writers, when they were going through Oklahoma, stayed there too. And Lost Generation is like the Hemingway generation.
Okay.
So, I mean, they've got history, heritage, I mean, Plaza was just a cool part of town that they've, kind of renewed.
Mm-hmm.
And it's super awesome, but it's, it's new. We'll see what happens long term. It's just started. It's a baby,
Got you. So things like Save the Gold Dome, like important, I don't know, like political things like that. How did that affect your business on 23rd, or did it affect it at all?
No, not really. We're kind of a destination business.
Okay.
So, we started 23rd Street where we started it because of the vintage.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's where, if you're in the alternative culture at all in Oklahoma, you're going to end up at Kip and Peggy Curtis's place.
Mm-hmm.
That's just, so for us, it was just smart.
Right.
And we outgrew it so quickly. It's not that I'm a shrewd businessman or anything like that. I was just at the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
With the right mentality. I mean, you got to understand that. A quick lesson on modern body piercing. So, the modern body piercing started in the gay leather daddy community, believe it or not.
Okay.
So, originally, a lot of people that got into body piercing were either, gay, which turned off a lot of the straight crowd, or they got into it because they enjoyed sexually hurting other people. So when a straight guy that didn't get off on hurting other people opened a shop, it made it a lot more accessible to just everyday people that liked the look of it.
Okay.
So, originally our clientele was very punk rock, but after, believe it or not, the Aerosmith video where Alicia Silverstone gets her belly button pierced,
Mm-hmm.
that changed everything, and it became open to straight people.
Okay.
So, there were other shops in town, but, the one that was running Norman was, a gay leather daddy that hated sorority girls and frat boys and wanted to only pierce people that were in the scene, and the other one was really into hurting people sexually. So, we became the obvious sort of choice for everyone else that wasn't into getting hurt sexually or wasn't into the leather scene. So,
Gotcha.
yeah, so, just we were there at the right place, right time, right product, right mentality, and we did really, really well. But consequently, I don't think anywhere we would go, we would have our clients because they would seek us out.
Okay.
Being on this part of 23rd Street was part of historic Route 66.
Right.
Cool points there, but did it change business a lot? Probably not for us.
Gotcha.
And then, the whole dome thing. It's such a tragic story. I'm so sad that somebody can't get in there
Yeah.
and make it work. There was a restaurant doing really well in there for a while, but the landlord, they were going to move kind of over by the tower. And the guy that had owned the tower and some of those other buildings at that point, kind of jerked them around. So they started to move and then didn't have a place to move to, and then they had to dissolve. So they lost their place out of the Gold Dome, and they didn't have a place to go into. So yeah, just poor management.
Yeah.
I won't name that guy. He's managed things poorly his whole career. So he's a great musician, but just not a very smart businessman for sure.
So where do you see 23rd Street, Uptown 23rd, our little area, where do you see it going in the future?
Well, I mean, right now it's skyrocketing. It's doing great, So, everything is cyclical. It's just a matter of how long does the cycle last.
Okay.
Hopefully it lasts the rest of my life, but there's no telling, what will happen. It's just nice to see the buildings getting full of viable businesses again. It's nice to see. For 15 years, if anyone was walking down 23rd Street, They were either, homeless, a prostitute, looking for drugs, or they were gonna walk into our place. And you could always tell our customers from the other three. So when people actually started walking down 23rd Street and walked by our building, we're like, what? What just happened? But now we see it all the time, but that first, few months when that started to happen, it was crazy. It was absolutely just mind-boggling that somebody had some business on 23rd Street that wasn't mine. So, hopefully that continues. You hear, the people that are in Mesta Park and Heritage Hills can walk to businesses, but also people from all over are driving to these places. And, I see at some point there's going to have to be some parking addressed. Some parking issues are already arising. When you only have, basically the street parking and then just a few lots, it gets rough.
Yeah.
So, but I don't see why it would go badly as long as, the people continue to take care of their businesses. What we call mind the store. You gotta mind the store, you gotta mind the shop, if you stop minding it, it will get away from you. And when groups of people stop minding the store, the neighborhoods go bad.
Okay.
It's just kind of how it seems.
So our class is also writing a Wikipedia page on
Okay.
23rd Street, and we wanted your opinion on if you had any specific things you think we should put in the page to describe Uptown 23rd, or...
Well, I do think that the bit that I was saying about how it was a thoroughfare between two districts, I think that is relevant. I
Okay.
really do. I mean, aside from, the personal stories and that kind of thing.
Right.
I do think that was key. Uptown, don't get me wrong, Uptown was a super important part of town. But as Oklahoma City got bigger, 23rd Street became more of an artery and less of a shopping destination. So, back in the old days when 23rd Street really was just catering to the local neighborhoods, it made sense to have stores there.
Right.
But, now the city is going to have to decide on whether, traffic going 40 miles an hour past storefronts that are only, 8 feet from the road, if that's what they want. I would prefer it to where they put crosswalks and slowed traffic down and made it more pedestrian friendly, made it more bicycle friendly. They've been, the whole putting medians in, those meetings that they discussed that stuff, 15 years ago, that was the goal. The goal was, let's make this happen. But now that we're there, like the councilman that's in charge of this, they just had a thing about putting the crosswalk in front of the tower. The councilman that's for this district was against that. And it's like, well, why did we do all this work for a decade and a half? If you're just against it now, So I understand that he's also got to worry about, traffic flow and all that other stuff.
Right.
But, why start that project? Seems odd, there's a whole 1 mile north, there's a whole another thoroughfare there that doesn't have businesses other than Iron Star Barbecue. Make that the main thoroughfare. Make everyone drive 100 miles an hour down that street. Slow it down on our side of things. So, yeah.
All right. Do y'all have anything else you want to add? No? We good?
Yeah.
Okay,
That was
thank you
super
so
painless.
much. Oh, I'm so glad. I didn't want it to be painful.
It's all good. It's all good. Yeah, 20 years of seeing the crazy stuff on 20.
Yeah, I can imagine.
There's
So
been-
many stories.
You don't even know. You don't even know. Just, the cast of characters has changed a whole lot, for sure. Because it's, for the first 10 years, we knew the bums, they were the same bums. So, and depending on what state of inebriation or, drug psychosis they were in, they can be very interesting or very just normal. And like I said, the first time we started seeing just normal people walking by that weren't coming to our business, it was crazy. It was just so, wow, what just happened? The line is laying with the wind.
Sorry to interrupt. I have
It's
a
all good.
question. What do you think that we will see within our next 4 years of going to this school? What do you think is going to happen at 23rd Street?
Man, I think it's just going to get more polished. You know, I think that it's really, it's really becoming more friendly to everybody. You know, I mean, it was a time where I'm a big, you know, hairy, tattooed, scary-looking dude, and I wouldn't walk around some of the parts of 23rd Street at night, and I just don't think that it's going to stay that way. You know, I feel like it's getting just better and better. You know, I mean, the university's been a stalwart here for years and years and years, but it's been an island, you know, in a sea of bad. And now I feel like, you know, you could walk from here, campus, to other places and go eat and do things. And not be afraid for your life. You know, bicycle is a real option around here now. And that's super cool. You could have never paid to ride a bicycle down 23rd Street. People were going as fast as they could down the street to get away from everything. You know? So once you got back in the neighborhoods, it wasn't too bad, unless you were going into Jefferson Park.
Well, yes.
I'll tell you what, there was one time, not one time, hundreds of times before the cops started busting them, but the apartments that are directly behind my shop, if I would leave and drive down the alley, all the front porch lights had been unscrewed, so it's completely black. And you would see the lighters that they used to light crack back then was like a jet flame. It wasn't just like a lighter. And you'd see the lighter of that kind, you know. So there's just people sitting out on their porches smoking crack and meth. And none of the other neighbors were mad, you know, they were all doing it. So finally we started seeing, you know, like 50 cop cars. And after enough of that, you know, it kind of quit. And now people have bought them and renovated them, and it's, you know, moving up, and, you know, all of the low income housing is kind of disappearing, which, you know, is bad if you're poor, but it's great if you're a property owner. You know, I mean, so it's kind of 6 one way, half a dozen the other. It's, you know, there's plenty of honest poor people that don't smoke crack. You know, they need a place to live too. So yeah, in the next 4 years, I can only see it getting more spit and polish, and, you know, just being a better place for sure.
Yeah.
No, the momentum is absolutely in favor of things being better right now. You know, it would take decades to get rid of this momentum. I really feel that way. So maybe even your kids, if they come here, you know, will still be seeing benefits of things that are happening.
Yeah,
That is good to hear.
definitely.
Yeah.
I actually have a question I just thought of.
What's that?
Would you ever consider opening up like another tattoo shop or piercing shop somewhere else, like besides 23rd Street?
We absolutely did. We actually looked in Norman, but Norman was very, the places that I wanted to open, they were very against it. So we looked at Campus Corner, and what is his name? The guy whose grandfather opened Old School Clothing Company. I can't remember his name, but he is, you know, inherited a multi-million-dollar clothing dynasty. I can't even tell you. I mean, they had hundreds of stores. It was a big deal. And he managed to run them all into the ground like that with terrible business decisions. And so his last little, you know, the Old School Clothing Company that was on Campus Corner closed down because he managed to lose that as well. But he still owns a lot of the properties there. And we tried to open up there, and he's like, nope, that's not what we want. I'm like, you're on Campus Corner. You know, this is the perfect business for here. Nope, we want more clothing. I was like, well, what do you mean clothing? He goes, yes, we are going for the, you know, something ridiculous like 30 to 45-year-old female demographic. I'm like, you are on Campus Corner. 45-year-old women want to come and be on Campus Corner to buy clothes? Have you lost your mind? So we found somebody else that would rent to us that wasn't, Rainey Powell is his name. So Rainey Powell just straight up told us no, even though we provided him with a full business plan, disclosed our taxes, at that point we were making amazing money. So it's, you know, it's not like we were coming in wanting to open some 2-bit rinky-dink. If you've been to our shop, I mean, it's nice. It's not some, you know, sketchy, scary, you know, guy fixing their Harley in the lobby. I'll be right there. No, it's not like that at all. But he just, wanted to create this Shangri-La for 45-year-old women. We found somebody else, and once they agreed to rent to us, they raised the price.
Ugh.
So it's like, hold on a second, you said it was going to be this much a month, and we talked about it, and they raised their rate, and we're like, all right, we'll take that. And then when we came to sign the papers, they raised it again,
Oh.
which tells me they had changed their mind about it.
Yeah.
That they had gotten cold feet on letting us rent there. So not only did we get so much just block from the landowners there, whenever I was paying a lot of attention to that, my shop didn't do as well. So, piercers are, piercers and tattooers are interesting people. Piercers tend to be a little bit more technical, and most tattooers are like if a stripper and a pirate had a baby and you sprinkle some hairdresser on that is like the mentality of a tattooer. So to keep them from just destroying themselves constantly, which is what pirates and strippers do to themselves, it's just constant management, and the crew I've got now, I think they get it. They're a bunch of sort of, I'm not gonna say older, but they're not 18. They've got families. They're buying houses. They get it as a job now. Some people are into the lifestyle of being a tattooer. Women and whiskey and strip clubs, and that's just not us. So finally, after 10 years of kissing a lot of frogs, we've gotten a crew that understand that we run our business like a business, not like that cool guy, liquor club. It's not that way. So, between people having these preconceived notions about our business, and then also, not managing things as well, we've kind of quit looking at other locations. We've tried twice now to open other places, and it just doesn't work out.
Yeah.
So it sucks. I would love to have more stores, but if that means that I'm gonna have to, sacrifice quality or customer service, I'm just not gonna do it.
Mm-hmm.
We'll just stay really awesome at what we do. Right there. So we'll see.
Awesome, thank you.
Great boots, by the way.
Thank you.
Love 'em.
They're my favorite.
Exactly.
Thank you for joining us today.
Yes.
pleasure.
Thank you so much. It was a blast.
Glad it was good stuff. I hope you can get something out of it.
I'm sure we can.
Although I would have loved to have sat in for Coop's interview.